Hey, Daryl here, and this is my daily devotional. God's got a plan, and God's way is the best way. But sometimes we have to learn that the hard way. God's way is the best way, but often we do have to learn that the hard way. Now, Moses had followed God's leadership, led the children of Israel out of the bondage of Egypt. They got out in the desert. The people started crying out, "We're thirsty! We're thirsty!" So God gives Moses direction in Exodus chapter 17, where he says, "The Lord answered Moses, walk on ahead of the people, take with you some of the elders in Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah. Listen, God gave a direction. He struck the rock, and water came out. The elders had to have been amazed. Their need for water had come. Well, now fast forward a bunch of years, probably about 40 years, and we see the people again in the desert, and they're thirsty, and they're crying out, "Oh, Moses, if we would have just stayed." Man, their tune hadn't changed a bit. Same song, different verse. If we'd have only stayed. If we'd only stayed. But no, you brought us out here, we're going to die of thirst. And so God gives Moses some direction. Verse 6 of Numbers chapter 20. Moses and Aaron went from the assembly to the entrance to the tent of meeting and fell down before the glory of the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "Take the staff, and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together, speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will pour out its water." Do you hear what the Lord said? Speak to the rock. You will bring water out of the rock for the community so they and their livestock can drink. So Moses partially followed God's direction. Remember, God's way is the best way, but often we figure that out the hard way. Verse 9, Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded him. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock?" He must have been infuriated. Here we go, verse 11. Then Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. Seems like all's well that ends well. But sometimes we do learn the hard way, that God's way is the better way. Verse 12. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust in me enough to honor me as holy in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this community into the land I give them." These were the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and where he showed himself holy among them. You ever wondered why Moses and Aaron didn't have the privilege of crossing into the promised land, and it would become Joshua who would have that privilege? Because they learned the hard way, that God's way is the best way. Oh, they struck the rock instead of speaking to the rock. Oh, striking the rock was God's previous plan, but now his plan was different. And now they suffer the consequences. Listen, it's easy to get aggravated at God's people. I've been a part of church ministry for decades and decades, and it's easy to get aggravated at them. But he here said, "You rebels!" And then he struck the rock. God's way is the best way, but sometimes we learn that the hard way. God bless you. Good day.